So today we're going to talk about financial assistance and also emotional grief services that are available if you've lost a loved one in Australia. So the first place to start really is make sure you take enough time to grieve. Take the space that you need to properly grieve and grieve in your own way. Don't feel like you have to go rush into finalising all the administrative stuff too quickly. All that stuff will happen over time. Sorting that stuff over the next 6 months after death is perfectly reasonable and normal. So let's start off with financial assistance that's available to you. Here are some things to think about to hopefully help you financially after you've lost someone close. First is check if your loved one had any prepaid funeral plans or funeral insurance. So you might need to go and search through their papers, through their filing cabinet to see if they have any such policy. Next, have a look for life insurance. Now, life insurance can be separated into two categories. One is life insurance can actually be part of your loved one's superannuation. And if it's part of your loved one's superannuation, what happens is when your loved one passed away, the life insurance payment will be paid into the super fund and it will top up the super fund balance. The second type of life insurance is the most common, or it's a standalone policy. So it's a policy separate to the superannuation fund. That's where your loved one would have purchased a life insurance policy, would have paid the premiums, would have nominated a beneficiary, and that could be also a source of financial support. Also check if your loved one had mortgage protection insurance. Some mortgage insurance policies will provide some sort of payment in the event of death. So that's important to have a look at as well. The other thing to have a look at is check if there are any unrecovered health insurance claims. So if your loved one was receiving medical treatment, they might be entitled, or the estate might be entitled, to a payment from a health insurer. The other things to think about is if there was accidental death or traumatic death or a serious injury or illness, then some insurance providers and super funds might provide an additional payment if the death falls into one of those categories. So that could be an extra $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 payment if the death was accidental or serious. The other thing to bear in mind is if the death happened at work, then you should definitely speak to a personal injury lawyer to see if the estate can make a claim for workers' compensation, which is a claim under work cover. Another major source of financial assistance is the super fund. Superannuation is often most people's largest asset or second largest asset after the family home. The way that super works is your loved one would have been making payments regularly, or their employer would have been making payments regularly into the fund over the lifetime that they were working. So that is a source of funds, and presumably the super fund invested those funds wisely and the money grew over time. Then, as mentioned previously, super funds can also have life insurance attached to it, which can be an extra source of payment. It could be $100,000, $200,000. Each life insurance policy varies, so that would certainly increase the superannuation balance. And finally, if you're a beneficiary under your loved one's will, or if they didn't have a will and you're a close family member, then you could be entitled to an inheritance, and that could help you financially. So whatever assets form part of your loved one's estate will be, you may be entitled to receive a portion of that, and that could help you financially as well. Part 2, Centrelink. So Centrelink has a lot of benefits available if you've lost a loved one. The first one is that there are Centrelink exemptions available if you're already receiving a Centrelink payment such as JobKeeper, youth allowance or a parenting payment. These exemptions will exempt you from undertaking your activity test requirements or other reporting obligations for a period of 8 to 14 weeks. So that can give you some breathing room to not be stressed out about all the Centrelink's requirements, and you can concentrate on dealing with your loved one's death. If you've lost a partner or a spouse, de facto partner or a spouse, then if you were receiving Centrelink already, such as you're receiving job seeker or youth allowance or partner allowance, you could continue to receive further payments for up to 14 weeks after your loved one's death. If you're a single person or a pensioner, then a lot of the time, if you're a single person, your Centrelink payments or your loved one's Centrelink payments will end at the time of death. But a single pensioner may receive additional payments for up to 14 days after death. If you were a carer for your loved one, you could also be entitled to additional continued carers payments after death for up to 14 weeks after your loved one passed away. If you lost a child, there is also potentially parental payments, which could extend up to 14 weeks after your child's passing. And if you don't qualify for any sort of Centrelink income support and you're experiencing severe financial hardship, then Centrelink also has a special benefit payment possibility that you can apply for as well. Part 3. If your loved one was a veteran, the Department of Veteran Affairs may have benefits available to you. For example, the Department of Veteran Affairs may be able to contribute to your loved one's funeral, and there also might be entitlements for you to receive a bereavement payment of some kind. It's also a good idea to contact your local ex-service organisation to see if there's any sort of assistance and information that they can provide to you. In Australia, we really look after our veterans, so there'll be no doubt some sort of financial assistance available to you if your loved one served in the armed forces. Part 4, work. So if your loved one passed away, as mentioned, you should take some time to properly grieve, and that often means taking time off work. Taking time off work to process the death, taking time off work to plan the funeral. So in Australia, if you're an employee, you're entitled to 2 days of compassionate leave if you've lost a loved one and if your loved one was a close family member. Now, the meaning of close family member is a pretty wide definition. It could include all the close family members that traditionally form part of your close family, such as your child, parent, spouse, grandparents, but it also goes further than that. It can also include your former partner. It can also include stepchildren and your step-parents and your step-brothers and sisters. And it can also include the close family members of your partner or your former partner. So that's a pretty wide catch-all net that falls under the term close family member. So if any one of those people passed away, you should be entitled to 2 days of compassionate leave. And if you're a part-time or full-time employee, then you're entitled to payment for those 2 days as well. If you're a casual, you're not entitled to a payment. The other types of leave available to a lot of employees are sick leave. So if you're a full-time and part-time employees gets up to 10 days of sick leave per year. So if you're unfit for work because of you're grieving and you're experiencing a lot of emotional distress, then you can apply for sick leave to your employer, and you could be entitled to be paid for that sick leave if you're part-time and full-time. Casuals don't get sick leave paid. The other types of leave that could be available to you if you're a part-time or full-time employee is annual leave. And you can use that just to take some breathing room, and also long service leave is potentially also available if you've worked the minimum requirements, which is usually 5 to 10 years depending on where you live. Part 5, grief services. There are a number of not-for-profit organisations that can help you deal with the emotional distress and the grief of losing your loved one. Some of the most popular in Australia that you should consider are Beyond Blue. They can assist you if you experience any sort of anxiety or depression or PTSD or anything like that from losing a loved one. There's the Australian Child and Adolescent Trauma, Loss and Grief Network. They provide assistance to young people affected by grief. Lifeline. Any Australian who's experiencing emotional distress can access their 24-hour crisis support service. And Solace Australia. Solace Australia is an organisation that provides support for people who've lost their partner or spouse. I hope this video has helped you. Subscribe to our channel for more information about what steps you should take if you have recently lost a loved one.